I never thought a phone call from a complete stranger would be the thing that finally made me understand who my wife really was. Standing in my garage that Wednesday afternoon, engine grease under my fingernails and my son's words still echoing in my head. It was just an old necklace, Dad. Mom's gone. We need money now. I felt something inside me break that I didn't know could still shatter after 3 years of grieving. But that phone call, when it came 2 days later, would change everything I thought I knew about Clara, about Marcus, and about what it means to carry someone else's secrets with grace. Let me take you back to where this really started, because revenge isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about quiet truths finally surfacing, about watching someone realize the magnitude of what they've thrown away. My name is Harold Brennan, and I've been a mechanic in Millbrook, Indiana for 33 years. It's the kind of small Midwestern town where everyone knows your business before you do, where the diner serves the same meatloaf special every Thursday, and where secrets have a way of festering in the humid summer air until they rot from the inside out. Clara and I raised our son Marcus here, in the same house her parents left us, with its sagging porch and the oak tree out front that's older than the town itself. Clara died 3 years ago, pancreatic cancer. 8 months from diagnosis to the funeral, and I watched her shrink into someone I barely recognized, except for two things that never changed: her gentle smile and that silver necklace she wore every single day. Even when she was too weak to get out of bed, even when the hospice nurse tried to remove it to make her more comfortable, Clara would reach up with trembling fingers and shake her head. "It stays," she'd whisper, and that was that. It wasn't fancy. Just a simple silver chain with a small pendant that caught the light sometimes when she moved. I'd asked her about it once, early in our marriage, and she'd said it was a family heirloom, something passed down that meant a lot to her. I never pushed for more details. That was Clara. She had her private places, and I respected them. 32 years of marriage taught me that some mysteries don't need solving, they just need honoring. After she passed, I kept the necklace in my top dresser drawer, wrapped in the silk scarf she'd worn to our wedding. Sometimes, on the worst nights, I'd take it out and hold it, trying to remember the weight of it around her neck, the way it would rest just above her collarbone. It was the last piece of her I could touch. Marcus had always been a good kid. Maybe not ambitious like some of the children his friends from high school had become, the ones who left Millbrook for college and never looked back, but good. Kind. He'd stayed local, worked various jobs, dated a nice girl named Jennifer for a while until that fell apart. Clara's death hit him hard, maybe harder than it hit me, because he dealt with it the way a lot of young men do. By pretending it didn't hurt, by filling the void with noise and bad decisions. The gambling started about a year after we buried her. Small stuff at first, or so I thought. Poker nights with friends, trips to the casino over in Michigan. He'd mention winning a few hundred here and there, and I'd warn him not to get carried away, but what was I supposed to do? He was 28 years old, living in the apartment above Sal's Pizza on Main Street, making his own choices. I should have seen the signs. The way he started asking to borrow money more frequently. The way his car, a beat-up Honda he'd bought with his own savings, suddenly had new rims and a sound system he couldn't possibly afford. The way he'd avoid my eyes when I asked him direct questions. But grief makes you stupid, makes you willing to overlook things because you've already lost so much that you can't bear to lose anything else. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when I discovered the necklace was gone. I'd had a rough night, one of those dreams where Clara was still alive and we were young again, dancing in the kitchen to that old Motown record she loved. And when I woke up, the emptiness was so crushing I needed to hold something of hers, needed to feel connected to her in some tangible way. The scarf was still there, folded neatly, but when I unrolled it, there was nothing inside. My heart started pounding. I tore through that drawer, then the entire dresser, then the bedroom, convinced I'd moved it somewhere and forgotten. But I'm a methodical man. 33 years of diagnosing engine problems teaches you to be systematic, and after 2 hours of searching, I had to face the truth. Someone had taken it. There was only one person besides me who had access to this house. I called Marcus at 11 in the morning. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Dad, what's wrong? I need you to come over, now. I'm working the lunch shift at." "Now, Marcus." Something in my tone must have cut through whatever fog he was in, because 20 minutes later his Honda pulled into my driveway, bass thumping so loud the neighbor's dog started barking. He came through the front door looking defensive already, shoulders hunched, hands shoved in the pockets of his jeans. His face did something complicated. A flash of guilt, followed by defiance, followed by a kind of desperate rationalization I'd seen before in the faces of men who knew they'd crossed a line but were going to defend it anyway. "Dad, I can explain." "Where is it, Marcus?" He ran his hand through his hair, the same sandy brown Clara's had been before the chemo took it. "I needed money. I'm in some trouble, okay? And I knew you wouldn't give it to me if I asked, so You stole from me." The words came out harder than I intended, but I wasn't going to sugarcoat this. "You went through my personal belongings, and you stole the last thing I had of your mother." "It's not stealing, Dad, I'm your son, and it's not like she was wearing it anymore. She's gone. She's been gone for 3 years, and you keep this house like a shrine, holding onto all her stuff like she's coming back. We need money now, for real problems, not for sitting in a drawer doing nothing." The casual cruelty of it, the dismissive wave of his hand as he said it, sent a wave of rage through me so intense I had to step back and take a breath. This was my son. This was the boy Clara had held while he was teething, had driven to baseball practice every weekend, had cried over when he graduated high school because she was so proud. "What did you do with it?" I asked quietly. "I sold it. Pete's pawn shop on Route 9. Got $300 for it." $300. He'd sold the last physical connection I had to my wife, the thing she'd valued enough to never take off even when she was dying, for $300. "How much do you owe?" I asked. He shifted his weight. "That's not really." "How much, Marcus?" 15,000, maybe a little more. The number hit me like a punch. $15,000. I thought about my own savings, the modest retirement account I'd built over 3 decades of oil changes and brake jobs, the life insurance payout from Clara that I'd been carefully managing. I could pay it. I could make this problem disappear, but something stopped me, some instinct that this wasn't about the money, not really. "You need to get it back," I said. "Dad, I can't. I already used the money to make a payment, to buy myself some time. These guys don't. I don't care what you have to do. That necklace was your mother's. It's not yours to sell." He laughed a bitter sound. "Right, because Mom would want me to get my legs broken over a piece of jewelry. Come on, Dad, be realistic. I'll make it up to you. I'll get you something else, something nice when I get back on my feet." "Get out." "What?" "Get out of my house, and don't come back until you understand what you've done." He stood there for a long moment, jaw working, and I could see him cycling through emotions: anger, guilt, defiance, fear. Finally, he turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood in that empty living room, surrounded by Clara's things, her books on the shelf, her reading glasses still on the end table, her favorite throw blanket folded over the back of the couch. And for the first time since she died, I felt truly alone. Not grief alone, which I'd become accustomed to, but the deeper loneliness of realizing that the person you raised, the person you thought you knew, was capable of such casual disregard for the things that mattered most. That night I drove to Pete's pawn shop. Pete Kowalski had gone to high school with Clara, had been a groomsman at our wedding. His shop was a cluttered maze of guitars, power tools, and dusty jewelry cases, the kind of place where desperation came to get converted into cash. The bell over the door chimed when I walked in. Pete looked up from behind the counter, his face breaking into a sad smile when he recognized me. "Harold," I was wondering if you'd show up. You knew it was Marcus who brought it in. That He nodded slowly. I tried to tell him not to. I said, "That's your mother's piece, son. Your dad's gonna want that back." But he was insistent. Frankly, he looked scared. I gave him 300 just to help him out, even though I knew it wasn't worth that much as scrap silver. Do you still have it? Pete's expression turned apologetic. Sold it this morning. Woman came in, older lady, nicely dressed. She looked at it for maybe 30 seconds and offered me 500 cash. Said it was exactly what she'd been looking for. I tried to tell her I could order something similar, but she wanted that specific piece. Paid and left before I could even bag it properly. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. You didn't get her information. She paid cash, Harold. No reason to. But she had an unusual way of speaking, kind of formal, maybe European. And she left this, said if anyone came asking about the necklace to give them her card. He pulled a small cream-colored business card from under the register and handed it to me. The cardstock was heavy, expensive. Embossed gold lettering read, Dr. Isabel Morrow, Curator of Renaissance Antiquities, Morrow Foundation for Historical Preservation. There was a phone number with an international code I didn't recognize and an email address. She specifically said if someone came asking. I asked. Those were her exact words. She seemed to know someone would. I took the card, feeling its weight in my hand. This made no sense. Who was this woman, and why would she be looking for Clara's necklace specifically? How would she even know it would be in a pawn shop in Millbrook, Indiana? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept turning the business card over in my hands, studying it from every angle as if it would reveal some hidden message. Finally, around 2 in the morning, I gave up and went down to the kitchen. I made coffee, even though the caffeine was the last thing I needed, and I pulled out the box of Clara's personal papers I'd kept in the hall closet. I'd gone through these documents before, of course, right after she died, dealing with insurance claims, closing accounts, all the grim administrative work that follows death. But I looked through them again now with different eyes, searching for any connection to this Dr. Morrow, any hint of Clara's past that I might have missed. Clara had been a private person, but not secretive, or so I'd thought. She'd grown up in Michigan, the only child of parents who'd emigrated from somewhere in Europe when they were young, France, maybe, or Belgium. They died in a car accident when Clara was in her early 20s, before I'd met her. She'd shown me a few photos once. Formal-looking people in front of an old house, her mother wearing pearls and an expression of aristocratic reserve, her father stern in a dark suit. I'd always assumed they'd been educated people who'd fallen on hard times, which was why they'd ended up running a small antique shop in Detroit. I found the photos in an envelope at the bottom of the box. Clara's mother, Marguerite, staring at the camera with the same quiet dignity Clara had carried. And there, the next morning at exactly 9 o'clock, I called the number on Dr. Morrow's card. It rang 4 times before a woman answered with a crisp, Morrow Foundation, how may I assist you? My name is Harold Brennan, I said. I'm calling about a necklace that Dr. Morrow purchased yesterday from a pawn shop in Indiana. It belonged to my late wife. There was a pause, and I could hear the sound of typing. One moment, Mr. Brennan. Let me transfer you to Dr. Morrow directly. She's been expecting your call. That phrase again, been expecting. The line clicked, played a brief snippet of classical music, then a woman's voice came on, warm but formal, with a slight accent I couldn't quite place. Mr. Brennan, thank you for calling. My name is Isabel Morrow, and I believe we have a great deal to discuss regarding your late wife, Clara, and the necklace she wore. How did you know to look for it in Millbrook? I asked, dispensing with pleasantries. How did you even know it existed? Because I've been searching for it for 15 years, she said simply. And because Clara was my cousin, second cousin technically, though we never met. I only learned of her existence when I began tracing the necklace's provenance. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. I don't understand. I imagine you don't, Mr. Brennan. The necklace your wife wore every day, the one she told you was a simple family heirloom, is actually a Renaissance pendant called the Tears of Marguerite. It was created in 1547 by a Florentine master craftsman named Benvenuto for the Duchess Marguerite de Moraux. It's been in my family for 470 years, passed down through the female line, until it was stolen during a violent family dispute in 1952. I sat down hard on one of the kitchen chairs. Stolen. My great-aunt and your wife's grandmother were sisters, both in line to inherit the pendant according to family tradition. When their mother died, there was a dispute, a terrible one, involving accusations and lawsuits and threats. Your wife's grandmother, Marguerite, yes, named for the original Duchess, took the pendant and fled with her young family to America. The family assumed it had been sold, lost, melted down. But clearly she kept it, hiding in plain sight as she built a new life. This can't be right, I said, but even as I spoke, I was thinking of the photograph, of Marguerite's formal bearing, of the way Clara had always insisted the necklace stay with her always. Mr. Brennan, I'm currently in Chicago on other business. I can be in Millbrook by tomorrow afternoon. I think we should have this conversation in person, and I'd like to show you documentation that will prove everything I'm telling you. Would that be acceptable? I should have said no. I should have hung up, called a lawyer, protected myself from whatever scam this clearly was. But something in her voice, something in the impossible precision of details that couldn't be fabricated, made me say yes. Dr. Isabel Morrow arrived at my house at 2 o'clock the following afternoon, driving a rental sedan that looked out of place on my gravel driveway. She was in her early 50s, I guessed, dressed in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm and shook my hand with the firm grip of someone used to commanding respect. "Thank you for agreeing to see me, Mr. Brennan," she said as I led her into the living room. "I know this must be overwhelming." She sat on the couch, placing her portfolio on the coffee table, and pulled out a laptop along with several folders of documents. "Before I show you the evidence, I want to explain something. The pendant itself, the actual jeweled piece, is valuable, certainly. But what makes the Tears of Marguerite extraordinary is what's hidden inside it. Inside it." She nodded. The pendant opens. Inside is a miniature portrait, painted on ivory, of Duchess Marguerite de Moraux and her daughter. But more importantly, behind that portrait is a hollow space containing a small diamond, a flawless 17-carat stone that was part of the French crown jewels until the Revolution. "That can't be," I said weakly. "Clara wore it every day, to the grocery store, to church. She wore it in the garden for God's sake." "Which is precisely why no one ever suspected," Isabel said softly. "Mr. Brennan, your wife was entrusted with one of the most valuable pieces of Renaissance jewelry in private hands, and she protected it by treating it as worthless. She hid it in plain sight, wearing it so casually that no one would ever imagine its true value. That takes remarkable courage and discipline." She opened her laptop and turned it to face me, showing me a photograph of a painting, a formal portrait of a woman in Renaissance dress, and around her neck, unmistakably, was the necklace. The same simple silver chain, the same modest pendant. Then she showed me documents, family trees traced back centuries, legal papers from the 1952 dispute, photographs of Clara's grandmother Marguerite standing with other family members, the necklace visible in several shots, immigration records, birth certificates, a web of evidence so intricate and detailed it couldn't possibly be fabricated. "After my mother died," Isabel explained, "I inherited the responsibility of tracking family heirlooms that had been lost or stolen. The Tears of Marguerite was the most significant piece still missing. It took years of research, hiring genealogists, following paper trails through immigration records. I finally traced Marguerite's family to Detroit, then to Clara. But by the time I found her address, she'd already passed away. I continued monitoring, quietly, respectfully, waiting to see if the necklace would surface. When your son sold it to the pawn shop, I got an alert from a network I'd set up with dealers and collectors. "You've been watching us," I said, and it should have felt like a violation, but instead I felt something else, the strange relief of understanding. Clara's secrets had been protection, not deception. "I've been watching for the necklace," she corrected gently. "And I'm very glad I found it before it disappeared into a private collection or was damaged by someone who didn't understand its value." She reached into her portfolio and pulled out a small velvet box. When she opened it, there was the necklace, looking exactly as I remembered it from around Clara's neck. Simple, modest, unremarkable. "This is yours by right of inheritance," Isabel said. Clara was the legitimate heir through her grandmother's line. However, my family has maintained the moral foundation specifically to preserve and display pieces like this. Our museum in Lyon houses the finest collection of Renaissance jewelry in private hands, and the Tears of Marguerite would be the crown jewel of that collection, reunited with other pieces made by the same craftsman. She paused, looking at me steadily. "I'm here to offer you a choice, Mr. Brennan. You can keep the necklace. It's legally yours. You could auction it and receive the full market value, that $2.3 million, likely more at a major house like Sotheby's. Or you can allow me to return it to the Morrow Foundation, where it will be displayed in a climate-controlled gallery, studied by scholars, and appreciated by thousands of visitors each year. In return, the foundation would pay you a finder's fee of $300,000 and would cover any outstanding debts or financial obligations you or your immediate family currently have. $300,000, enough to retire comfortably, to finally fix the roof on this old house, to stop worrying about whether I'd have enough when my body finally gave out and I couldn't turn wrenches anymore. And she was offering to clear Marcus's debts, too. 15,000 that had seemed like an insurmountable mountain just days ago. "Why offer anything at all?" I asked. "If it's legally mine, you could just walk away." "Because I believe in honoring the choices people make," she said. "Your wife chose to protect this piece for decades, sacrificing the comfort and security that money could have bought. She wore it every day as a reminder of her responsibility, her connection to her heritage. That kind of integrity deserves respect, not exploitation. I won't take from you what's rightfully yours, but I will ask you to consider what Clara would have wanted." I looked at the necklace, remembering it against Clara's skin, catching the light while she stirred pasta sauce at the stove, while she read on the porch swing, while she sat beside my hospital bed that time I had pneumonia and held my hand through the worst of the fever. She'd never told me what it really was, had carried that weight alone, but she'd worn it every single day like a promise kept. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course, take all the time you need." Isabel stood, preparing to leave, then paused. "Mr. Brennan, there's one more thing you should know. When I researched Clara's life, I learned about her work at the homeless shelter, her volunteer hours at the library, the scholarship fund she'd quietly contributed to for high school students who couldn't afford college. Your wife lived modestly, not because she had to, but because she chose to. She could have sold this necklace at any time. Instead, she used your combined income to help others while protecting a piece of history. That tells me everything I need to know about her character." After Isabel left, I called Marcus. He answered with the same wary tone he'd had since our fight. "Dad, come over, we need to talk." "Look, if this is about the necklace again, just come over, Marcus, please." An hour later, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Clara had served thousands of meals. where Marcus had done his homework while she checked it over his shoulder. I told him everything, about Isabel, about the necklace's true value, about the choice I now had to make. I watched the color drain from his face as the numbers sank in. $2.3 million, he repeated numbly. I sold it for $300. You did? Dad, his voice cracked. I didn't know, God, I didn't know. That's the problem, Marcus. You didn't think it mattered enough to know. You saw something your mother treasured, something I treasured, and you decided its only value was what you could get for it right now. That's what hurts, not the money, the disrespect, the assumption that your immediate needs mattered more than anyone else's memories or feelings. He put his head in his hands. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I need you to understand something. Your mother wore a fortune around her neck every day and never once thought about cashing it in, even when money was tight, even when we struggled. She made that choice because she understood something about responsibility, about sacrifice, about being part of something bigger than yourself. And she never complained. She never made me feel small for being a mechanic instead of some rich businessman who could give her everything. She chose this life, chose me, chose you, and she did it with grace. Marcus was crying openly now. I'm sorry, Dad, I'm so sorry, I've messed up everything. The gambling, the debts, selling Mom's necklace, I don't know how to fix any of it. That's what I'm trying to figure out, I said. Because I can make your problems go away with this money. Dr. Morrow is offering to clear your debts, but I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I don't know if that's what your mother would want, or if it's just enabling you to keep making the same mistakes. Over the next few days, I did a lot of thinking. I visited Clara's grave at Millbrook Cemetery, standing in front of her headstone with its simple inscription. Clara Marie Brennan, beloved wife and mother, 1960–2019. I thought about the life we'd built together, the modest house, the small joys, the way she'd never seemed to want for anything beyond what we had. I thought about Marcus, too, about the boy he'd been and the man he was struggling to become. The gambling wasn't just about money. I understood that now. It was about grief, about trying to feel something other than the vast emptiness Clara's death had left behind, about making bad choices because good ones seemed too hard. I called Isabel on a Thursday afternoon exactly 1 week after she'd first shown up at my door. Dr. Morrow, this is Harold Brennan. I've made my decision. I'm listening. I want the necklace to go to your museum, to be displayed where people can appreciate it and learn about its history. Clara protected it for so long. It seems wrong to just lock it away in a vault or sell it to some private collector who'd never share it with anyone. I could hear the smile in her voice. I think that's a wise and generous choice, Mr. Brennan. Your wife would be proud. But I have conditions. First, the display needs to tell Clara's story, not just the necklace's history, but hers too. How she came to have it, how she protected it, how she lived. I want people to know about her integrity. Absolutely, we'd be honored to share her story. Second, the finder's fee you mentioned. I want half of it set up in a trust fund that Marcus can't touch directly. It'll pay for legitimate expenses, education, certified financial counseling, and therapy. But he doesn't get access to the lump sum until he can demonstrate 2 years of financial stability and accountability. I'll provide the documentation to prove he's met those requirements. There was a pause. That's actually quite brilliant, Mr. Brennan, and the other half. I'll take it as retirement savings. I've got maybe 10 more good years of work in me, and then I'd like to not worry. Consider it done. I'll have the contracts drawn up with exactly those stipulations. There's one more thing I'd like to offer, if you'll permit it. The Morrow Foundation hosts an annual gala in Lyon where we showcase our new acquisitions. This year, when we unveil the Tears of Marguerite, I'd like you and Marcus to be our guests of honor. All expenses paid. It would be an opportunity for both of you to see the necklace in its new home, to meet the scholars who will study it, to be part of its next chapter. The thought of traveling to France, of seeing the necklace displayed in some elegant museum, felt surreal. But it also felt right. We'd be honored, I said. The paperwork took 3 weeks to finalize. Lawyers reviewed contracts, appraisers verified values, and Isabel's foundation arranged for the necklace to be transported with the kind of security usually reserved for heads of state. During that time, I had Marcus come over every evening after his shift at the pizza place. We didn't talk much at first. I'd make dinner, simple stuff, spaghetti or chili, the meals Clara used to make, and we'd eat in the kitchen while the evening news played in the background. Gradually, though, Marcus started opening up about how the gambling had started as a way to escape the grief. "Mom wouldn't have let it get this bad," he said one night, pushing his food around his plate. "She would have called me out way before it went this far." "Your mother loved you enough to let you make mistakes," I said. "But she also loved you enough to hold you accountable for them. That's what I'm trying to do now. By making me go to therapy and financial counseling. By giving you the tools to fix yourself. I can't do it for you, Marcus. And throwing money at the problem won't solve it. You have to want to change." He looked at me across the table, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability, genuine remorse, maybe even the beginning of understanding. "I want to be better, Dad. I want to be someone Mom would be proud of. Then start acting like it." The financial counselor Isabel's foundation arranged was a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in gambling addiction recovery. She met with Marcus twice a week, going over his spending habits, setting up automated savings, teaching him to recognize the emotional triggers that led him to the casino. The therapist, Dr. Raymond Walsh, worked on the deeper issues, the grief, the fear of failure, the desperate need to feel in control of something. I watched my son slowly start to change. It wasn't dramatic. There was no single moment of revelation. But week by week, I saw him showing up on time, saw him actually engaging with the process instead of just going through the motions, saw him starting to take pride in small victories like making it through a weekend without gambling. 2 months after I'd agreed to give the necklace to the foundation, Isabel called with news. "We've finished the display design," she said. "I'm sending you photos. I think you'll be pleased." The images that came through on my email took my breath away. The necklace was displayed in a custom-built case with museum-grade lighting that made it glow. But what struck me was the narrative display surrounding it. Large panels told the story in elegant text and photographs. The creation of the piece in Renaissance Florence, the Duchess Marguerite who first wore it, the family dispute in 1952, and then, taking up an entire wall, Clara's story. There was the photo from our anniversary, Clara smiling with the necklace around her neck. There was her obituary, listing her volunteer work. There were quotes from people at the homeless shelter describing her kindness. And there was a new portrait photograph of me that Isabel's team had taken during one of our meetings, with my quote, "My wife wore priceless treasure as if it were worthless, and treated worthless moments as if they were priceless." That was her gift. The gala was scheduled for October, and as the date approached, I found myself getting nervous. I'd never been on an airplane, never had a passport until now, never imagined myself walking into some fancy European museum to be honored for something I hadn't even known existed. Marcus seemed nervous too, but for different reasons. "What if I mess this up?" he asked the week before we were supposed to leave. "What if I say something stupid or embarrass you in front of all those rich people?" "Then you'll have said something stupid in front of rich people," I said. "They'll survive, and so will you. This isn't about impressing anyone, Marcus. It's about honoring your mother and understanding the legacy she left behind." Lyon, France turned out to be a beautiful city, all cobblestone streets and old buildings rising up from the rivers. Isabel met us at the airport with a driver, treating us like visiting dignitaries instead of a small-town mechanic and his screwed-up son. She put us up in a hotel that probably cost more per night than my monthly mortgage, and she made sure we had everything we needed. The night of the gala, Marcus and I put on the suits Isabel had insisted on buying for us, proper tailored ones that actually fit, not the cheap rentals we'd worn to Clara's funeral. Standing in front of the hotel mirror adjusting my tie, I caught Marcus's eye in the reflection. "You look good, son," I said. "You too, Dad." He hesitated. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Your mother never gave up on anyone," I said. "Seemed wrong to start now." The Morrow Foundation Museum was housed in a restored 17th century mansion, all soaring ceilings and marble floors. When we arrived, there were already 100 people milling around with champagne glasses, speaking in French and English and languages I couldn't identify. Isabel appeared immediately, guiding us through the crowd, introducing us to curators and collectors and wealthy donors. And then she led us to the new gallery, where the Tears of Marguerite had been unveiled earlier that evening. The room fell quiet as we entered, and I felt dozens of eyes on us, but I only had eyes for one thing. The necklace sat in its case under perfect lighting, looking simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary. But it was the wall display that made my throat tight. Seeing Clara's face 6 feet tall, seeing her story told with such care and respect, seeing her recognized not as the wife of a mechanic from nowhere, but as a woman of remarkable character who'd made an impossible